On the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Have someone move the consent agenda, moved by Director Rickman, second by Director Burke. Anything to pull? Nope. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none. Let's move along to first one, we're moving along to 7.
Correct.
0.1.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought that the bylaw enforcement policy was very well written. I don't think we made any changes. We can move to adopt it.
Yeah, she's just going to be here in case anyone has any questions. Okay. Hello. Nice to see you. You're the best. All right, Director Needham is here in case anyone has any questions regarding the review of bylaw enforcement policy 4.6. Are there any questions? None. It was very well written. Thank you for that review. And I will ask someone to move that bylaw enforcement policy 4.6 as currently worded be confirmed.
So moved.
Moved by Director Burke, seconded by Director Mack. Comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carried.
When you said comments, I put my hand up.
Sorry, comments.
I really like the way the policy is written, fully supported. I just want to raise the question that I've raised before, and that is the interpretation of the policy and how the bylaw officer conducts herself and what she does. Oh, we're open now.
Yes.
So I'll stop there. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you. We'll move along to 7.1.2, which is the Black Tusk Electoral Area D Development Variance Permit. And there is no presentation, but happy to open the floor to questions. This is fairly simple, it seems. Seeing no questions, would anyone like to move that? Moved by Director Maris, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? No? Okay, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 7.1.3. We're looking at the heritage conservation tools and overall approach to heritage resource management in the SLRD. And we have Director Needham here for, oh, that's right, my phone is driving me crazy. Here for questions. Any questions? Do you want to?
Just admitting Ms. McKay as well.
Oh,
just in case
okay,
there-
perfect. Thank you. Good morning, Ms. McKay. Or I guess.
Good morning.
Afternoon. We are on 7.1.3 discussing the heritage conservation tools. And if you wanted to make any comments, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we can move along to questions and comments from the board.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Ford. So I think this was presented at the EAD. I think I'll leave it to questions and happy to answer any that come up. I do want to mention that the staff recommendations in the report have been amended slightly based on feedback we heard at the EAD, and that is just to confirm a couple of the sites that were mentioned in the 2017 letter that kind of spurred the majority of this work may not actually be within the SLRD. So we're going to be looking into that if this moves ahead.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? No? Go ahead.
What you'll note the items in yellow, the wood fiber Japanese language school. And so I'd ask staff when they're looking into that, if that is a building that still exists on that wood fiber site, is there any possibility of moving that building into a more public area? Because that site's not going to be public. If there is a building, it's likely quite a small one. Is it possible to move it? And if so, I'd be more than happy to start looking for a site for it.
Okay. So we'll send that away as work to follow on. Go ahead, Director Mayor.
At the AD meeting, I commented that the reserve internment site was in Area B. And also the Sunshine Mountain ski chalet. We were supposed to get approval from the Railroad Recreation Area Subcommittee.
Thank you. And I saw another hand over there. Director Birch Jones, did you have a hand?
No, I was happy with the work on this and I was prepared to move the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's we had a good discussion about this at the EAD and I like to scan for other opportunities in Area B. It really got me thinking about that, but I don't have anything to add to what's here now.
Thank you. So we have a mover. Do you want to second it?
In just a moment, I
For
did.
discussion?
I recall at EAD, I noticed that that Japanese language school was not in fact in area. At least I don't think it's in Area D. If it's at the wood fiber site, it's actually in Squamish. So maybe I should withdraw my comments and suggest that Squamish take a look at moving it into Squamish. So first of all, we need to know if
Yeah,
there
we
is a
need to
building
understand
and if
that.
it's.
So we'll see that when the staff come back with the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seconder. Director Elliott, comment?
If it turns out that it's actually in the wood fiber site and on district land, that it can be referred to the district, so we don't forget that step, because that project is now under an industrial environmental certificate. And so if they don't know, they have, like, I don't recall this being in their environmental certificate, so they're doing whatever they want to the site, although I know they're trying to get permits from lots of different provincial bodies, so maybe this is on there. I have no idea. But anyway, if it turns out that it's actually in the DOS, if staff could refer it
To the district?
yeah, hopefully I don't have to add that to the question.
No, I think that's fine. Anyone over there?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. McKay. She done?
Yes,
She's coming up.
she might have one.
Okay, we don't want to let you go without saying goodbye. And thank you. You are coming back.
I think so. I have one more. I have 8.7, so I'll be back this
Come back to
afternoon.
you.
It'll end
We'll
good.
say goodbye then.
Thanks.
All right, 7.1.4, past funding resolutions completed. Someone ready to, is,
No presentation, but
Okay.
Ms. LaFrance was brought in to see if there are any questions. Oh,
I see Sylvia there.
yeah, I did that. That was a
Oops,
finger.
that's okay. What are we looking for here? All right.
There's Ms. LaFrance. if there are any
Hello, Ms.
questions.
LaFrance. Thank you for being here. We are on 7.1.4 and we're talking about returning unspent funding to their respective balances. Any questions from anyone for staff? Go ahead.
Thank you. I support all of these that's, but also the 50,000 moving out from Area B no longer allocated as 2 to 3 fuel management prescriptions. I still would like to have it tagged for any kind of fire smart activities in Area B. So
Ms. LaFrance, do you have the ability to direct that so that it remains earmarked for Fire Smart?
We'd have to have a new resolution, I believe. From what Annie has discovered when she reviewed all of these outstanding project funding pockets was that Sarah Morgan, the past Director of Protective Services, confirmed that we don't have the ability to create our own fuel management projects and that they have to go through the local government or the provincial, it's a provincial responsibility now. So I don't know how we can put a new resolution without having that responsibility. So
I would suggest that you go away to put some staff time to it. I don't want to make a resolution on the fly.
No, no.
Too much.
And it might be something that I should consider. I should have considered it at the EAD at the time. So I'll just follow that up at the next EAD.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Okay, any other comments or questions for staff on this?
I'll move the resolution.
Moved by Director Elliott, second by Director Birch Jones. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 7.1.5, electoral area director stipends. Director Rainbow, do you like to speak to?
Yeah, you could read the peak and you'll see it. Excuse me. This, I think most of you know, I wasn't intending to run again this term. And so I wanted to put this out in front of the board before this term ended, so that I could speak to it without it having any direct effect on me. But of course, now that I've been returning, then it will affect me, what would affect me. When I was talking to people about the possibility of running for the area director and talking about the job, about the amount of time that's involved, when it got to the question of, well, what do you get paid? I got laughed at. You know, people saying, you're crazy. And I was talking to younger people because I thought that it might be a good idea to get somebody younger involved. And so then I thought, well, what do we do about it? Do we just accept the way it is, and at the level that you're paying electoral area directors, you're going to get what you've got? People who've had a career, retired, have a pension, and can afford to do community service for very little money. And most of us were doing community service for no money before. So you know, so do you want to keep that, or do you want to maybe create a situation where you could attract some younger people who have I just use the word professional politician, but people who can see that it's a commitment they want to make and that maybe move on to something else from there. I don't think you're ever going to get that unless you make it possible for people to take this job on and still contribute to their family in terms of financial support and so on. So I think, you know, if we, I guess I'm not going to make a motion right now that we raise the salary to a certain amount, but what I would like is a commitment from this board that going forward, for the budget year next year, that if we can, or if it's going to be delayed a year, that's fine. But we pay attention to this and put some time into checking what we think we could do, should do, and so on. So, however you want to word that motion, I'll make it when, let's see what other people have to say first.
I guess I'm wondering historically if there's been a process at the SLRD to review remuneration for the stipend.
We did it when I was on the board, so within 2018, 2019.
Yeah, there was when Linda Flynn was CEO. We had a discussion about it, and we changed the system from, we used to get a stipend and then get paid for meetings.
Right.
And we figured out how many meetings roughly, and then rolled it all into one, so that now it's just a stipend. Plus, you know, you can still get expenses for driving and things like that. But that was, and then it was going to include, I think, CPI. So that's not going to make a big difference over a period of time. But that was, well, as Linda was here, it's a few years ago now.
I'm just wondering if the process check with, like, do we have comparator community? Was that the process?
I believe it was around the same time that we did the staff salary grid review. But they were separate processes because they were seen differently. I don't think there is a process, so I think
So I'm wondering,
I
because
caution
ours
that we
is,
go and create.
ours is time to go along with a staff salary review so that when we're out in the market looking at all the salaries, we also check with our comparator communities
Yeah.
around the council remuneration. So I'm just wondering if we have one of those coming up.
We do, through the chair, we do.
Okay.
And we discussed that. If the board decides to go there, doing them at the same time.
Certainly, I feel enough times passed that you would want to make sure, and as Director Rainbow said, we can't get the diversity that we want to see on the board unless we compensate people appropriately. And it's something that municipalities struggle with because it's a big job, and yet taxpayers don't feel like they should pay for a living wage salary. So I think looking at it in the context of a broader salary review makes sense to me.
Thank you. Director Demare.
Yeah, I have to agree with Tony. So I did look at a few other regional districts. And some of them are exactly what used to happen here at the SLRD. And their stipends were quite low. But they made up for it in meetings and so on and so forth. Another regional district is almost to what Tony suggested here, where their salaries are quite high, their stipends. And I've always worked on succession planning, and that's what I plan to do through my 4 years here. So when I look at an alternate this year, I'm going to see if I can find somebody younger. And I've got a few candidates that I'm looking at right now. I have talked to my alternate already, and so I got a backup there if that doesn't pan out. But I think definitely we need to look at more inclusion as we move forward, and that's one of the ways that we can.
Thank you. Director Forsyth and Director Stoner, and then Director Bergstrom's.
For what it's worth, we went through this process years ago in 2006 when I was first elected in Whistler, and we did it right away. It was a new council, and we the way we pay our staff is through a handbook, which is based on the 6 municipalities in our region. So it's Port Moody and similar size places. And we said, well, we'll pay the staff that way. Let's pay the council that way. We took it. It came out with our wage grid. We did it right away. There was very little pushback. And then the elegant solution was that it was put into a procedure bylaw so that it's reviewed in the final year of every council's term. So you may or may not be voting, like you said, you're not in the uncomfortable position of voting yourself a raise, you're voting the next council a raise, if it turns out to be an increase in time. So that's.
But it needs to start 6 months ago, not the last.
That's right.
Which is
I
what
mean,
you're
so we started it at the beginning of so you do it in December, and then it's triggered, and then in the procedure bylaw, it's triggered every end of every term.
I'll get to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. The recommendation in the agenda package is that staff bring a report to a future board meeting on how best to conduct the review. But hearing that there's a staff remuneration review kind of planned, I wonder how if staff would feel comfortable if we just direct for the board remuneration review to be included in that process.
Through the chair, yes.
That's great. Thank you. And go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And just to add, the alternates, don't forget about the alternates in that process, because they also have their own little scale for reimbursement, which is a complicated one based on meetings and mileage and so forth. But it makes sense. It should come up though at the same time as the directors, or down, as the case may be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I fully support this approach. I think that's exactly the way we should go. And I like the idea of Ralph said of having built into it some sort of procedural thing where it will be reviewed on a regular basis. I want us though, other than just looking at what other regional districts do, and I know that most of them are pretty low. The ones I checked, they're all low. And I don't want us to go into it saying, well, we're going to do what other people do. I want us to really look at a sea change here. We're going to do something different, and we're going to do it for reasons that I think are good reasons. So I just register that comment now.
Okay.
Well, given that, I heard Director Stoner say she might change the staff recommendation, but given Director Rainbow's comments, I think that staff should bring back the best way to approach this to make sure that aligns with the goals. So I think we do have to start looking at what a living wage looks like, and if we want to increase the diversity, so some principles that go into it, or we will just compare ourselves to other regional districts and do the same one. But if there's other values that the board wants to overlay on the EA director's grid, then I think that should come back to the board for discussion. So I think we should follow the staff recommendation versus, I think Councilor Stoner was trying to be efficient, but we may lose some of the nuance that Director Rainbow was trying to put into the conversation. So I'll move the staff.
Seconder.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to clarify that this was not a staff recommendation. This was the EAD's recommendation brought, it was a director's report put on the agenda at the EAD, and that was the EAD's going from recommendation to the board.
Yeah. Are you comfortable seconding?
I'm not sure what the motion is that
What were you looking at?
Sorry, I was looking at the motion that's in the agenda package, which I now appreciate was from the EAD, not from staff. Says that staff bring a report to a future board meeting on how best to conduct a review of electoral area.
That one.
I think that's, yeah. And I think that captures the work that needs to be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds fine.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving along to lunch. Yes.
But I saw it come in there.
Good. See, I need to keep an eye on that.
Nothing, this is your.
All right,
key eye.
Barb, we're gonna recess for lunch. Please be back at 2 minutes to 1 because we do have delegations to move through. Good afternoon. Danny Shreds, there we are. Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for being here. I understand you are far away.
Yes, yes, we are in Switzerland.
In Switzerland, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for being here today. You have 10 minutes for a presentation. I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. So I wanted to start with Burke. I'm the president of Burken Rec and Cultural Society. And we have about 58 members at the time. And it's actually funded by tax dollars. There was a vote on it years ago. So what we do is the Earth Day cleanup. We do the market in the Gates Lake Park and Easter egg hunt, Halloween celebrations up there in Burken. We did the Cool Creek Trail expansion because there was a dangerous situation with the parking. So we got money from the SLRD. And one of the things that was on our meetings or on our focus for a few years already is the old schoolhouse in Burken. And actually this year, I believe it's the 100th year anniversary. So it's 100 years old. It's on a rock foundation, a log building. And about 20 years, I would think, or maybe more, a new roof was put on. So that's good. It didn't rot, but it's been sitting empty for, I think, 15 years, kind of not used. And years ago, the Birken Rec and Cultural Society was actually on the lease, and somehow it wasn't used, and so things changed. So we would like, as a society, because we are from Birken, we would like to make sure that building is preserved. It's a really nice log building, except the bottom log, it's in good shape. It just needs restoration, but we would like to have somehow something that we could actually get grant and restore it, or do something, make it maybe usable, whatever it takes, or at least keep it so it doesn't deteriorate. It's 100 years old. It's probably the only building that's that old in our area, and it has a lot of memories attached to it. So we have some pictures. So if you could maybe start just showing the slides, you can just start whatever comes in there. So that's as it looks now, and that's for years like that, just garbage around, and it's just not been used. It's just sitting there. And the next slide. That's from the outside, and as you see, the bottom log probably would need replacing, but that we could get a grant for that from somewhere if we would have something in writing that we can actually be in charge or be part of it in some ways. Next slide, please. Here too, it's totally grown in some areas. Next slide. Okay, I think that's only those 3 slides. So yeah, because it's in the trees, we didn't got many pictures. I kind of ran out of time to get some pictures from many years ago. There were some old pictures somewhere, but I just got a little busy in the last while. So we did a survey in 2021, and we asked kind of what the community would like us to do as a society, as recreation and cultural society. And so one of the questions was if what they think about the old schoolhouse, and there was a strong voice to see it preserved. And so I just feel, yeah, we had actually almost Graham Haywood, he was working with us on it years ago, and it seemed we were going somewhere, but then he died, and now it's kind of things stopped. And so I feel, yeah, I just feel we would like to get something established. So I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. Are there questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. I'll open it up to questions from anybody. Go ahead, Director Mack.
Yeah, I support, this project, however it turns out. And I'm sure that there could be funding available for fixing this place up. It definitely needs to be, opened up so you can actually see the building, the weather can get in, sun can get in. But no, it's a really neat old facility, and it's very well worth keeping, that's for sure. So I think when you get back, Danny, you should come to an EAD committee meeting and bring it up there, and have sort of a plan in place, and maybe if you could, a preliminary budget of what it would take. We had looked at actually moving that to the Gates Lake Park at one time, but we had a professional moving company come up, do a survey, and they were kind of leery on moving it because they thought that they might destroy it. So I think it's better to concentrate on fixing it up in the location it's at, and that's the most secure spot, I believe. So anyways, look forward to talking to you when you get back, and yeah, I support your what you want to do. So Thanks for that.
I have a proposed resolution. I'll go to question from Director Richmond, then Director Elliott, and then I'll put a motion on the floor.
Thank you. I'd love to see it saved. I'm just curious what a management agreement would look like from a staff perspective and what that means.
I think that's what this resolution
Yes.
accomplishes.
Okay.
Not to be secretive
That
about
was my question.
it. Go ahead, Director Mayor.
Yeah, just curious, do you have a tenure on that land? It's Crown Provincial, so just curious who has a tenure on that property.
There's a lease in effect till 2046.
2046? And who's the lease with? Who's got the lease?
SLRD.
Yes, I'll tell you this.
Oh, the SLRD, okay.
Okay. Any other questions for our presenter? No? Okay, so the resolution that I would propose is that staff bring to the board a report outlining the requirements associated with assigning the province of BC file number, long number, Gates Indoor Recreation Facility Institutional Lease, which is the Birkin Schoolhouse, to the Birkin Recreation and Cultural Society as a nominal rent tenure, and that the report include an estimated staff time allocation and timeline in which the project could be incorporated into Environmental Services Department work plan. That clear? So you want to move it? Seconded by Director Richmond. Comments?
Is that a question really? Is that adding work that we don't need to add to us? If we
yeah.
lease it to the society, could they not then take full responsibility for?
I think we just want staff to understand what the levers are, right?
Yeah, through the chair, that's what this process would do. So we've looked into what the process would be to enable the society to take on the nominal rent tenure through us. So this would cause us to do what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just curious, would it be a sub-license agreement? that we're
We
looking
don't
at?
know yet. We'll get.
We don't know that?
That's the work that needs to be done.
Okay.
Yeah. Any further comments? No?
So how do we pay for that work?
Can I just make a comment, please?
Sure.
Because it feels like we went through this 10 times already, the same way, like do this, do that, but nothing ever happens because our society, we cannot get the people mobilized unless we have a lease agreement. Once we have a lease agreement, we can find out, okay, let's go in even with volunteers and clean it up, or let's get a grant to do this, but somehow I feel people will not come behind it if the SLRD is in charge, because it's our building, it's in our corridor. Of course, we will have to do whatever the legal things, building permit or permission. That's fair. There's no problem with that. But somehow I feel there needs to be a lease agreement so we can just get people motivated to actually stand with us and start doing something.
So through the chair, that's what this resolution would have us pursue, would be establishing a lease agreement, working with the society to establish that lease agreement. That's exactly what we're proposing.
Thank you.
Timeline beyond that, do you think?
That's part of the motion, is to understand the timeline and how much staff time to allocate to it. So I think this achieves the board's desire to see this work go without undue stress on everybody involved, and understand it through our department work plan. I think it's a good way forward. Anybody else? No? Okay, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Danny. We will be in contact soon.
Okay, wonderful. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You, Danny.
Lead is in.
Okay, bye.
All right, we're now on to our second delegation, Mr. Wiley, representative of Citizens for Sea to Sky Trail Community Group, and welcome. Thank you for being here today. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I'd like to thank the board members for having me here and those who put up with my pestering to find some time to talk to them this summer. Appreciate that. I'd also like to thank the volunteers that joined me and came out on this. There were about a half a dozen of us who had nothing better to do than pound through the woods and try to find a trail. So I guess you could put the slide up, first one. I won't try to point everything out, but everybody's familiar with Highway 99 and that section from Narren Falls down to the racetrack. So, and I don't know if the red line I've shown on that drawing represents the current plan, but Allison, I think, could point out if there's anything wrong with that. But generally speaking, as I understand it, it'll come out from the Gord's Garden end and down the Forest Service Road through past the racetracks and go along the highway or on or off it. There's two bridges at the Sioux and the Rutherford. One has to get over and then over Suicide Hill and then cross the highway. That's the slide number 2. Second one. So it'd go over Suicide Hill and then cross down at the railway crossing. That's at the top end, the red lines, and into the parking lot. So that's the current plan. And I guess when I looked at that and some friends, we thought, well, we do have sections of the Sea to Sky Trail that lack aesthetics and natural features, but we also have very beautiful sections. And so that was one thing about this particular section, that it passes through the highway, the hydro, the industries, racetracks, CNR. But maybe even more important were the safety aspects of those two bridges and having pedestrians and cyclists who may have to come out on the highway and cross and use either side. The shoulders aren't particularly wide. So I could see another Friendship Bridge kind of situation where you ultimately need fairly substantial bridge across both of those rivers. So I don't know, that would represent quite a dollar investment. So having looked at that, we thought, well, why don't we go and look at the east side of the Green River? And so we started doing that, and we made about 10 expeditions in there. So you could look at slide 3, which is a satellite track of our 10th trip, where we finally did get to Narren Falls. If you've got number 3 there, Natalie, there. Anyway, I was hoping Danny might stay in the meeting because I invited him on that last trip because I felt, well, we need some expert comment on this idea, and which he did. And so finally, after 10 efforts, we finally got the full, it's about an 8-kilometer trip each way. So it was quite a day. Anyway, the features here is we use the existing logging road that goes up past the Mount Currie trailhead, past a small lake and marsh for our access. Although in the future, a trail could be built off that logging road, particularly the steep parts. And then we got through a bit of a slash from the forest logging into what is a beautiful forest. And then we did a lot of crisscrossing on these expeditions, tracks down to the river, advancing each time. And we eventually ended up on these old logging roads. And I'm not sure, they're at least 50 years probably since it was logged. So, and then finally we got off that and opposite Rutherford, we're getting what we call view bump for lack of any other description. over that and down to the river at the south end of Suicide Hill. And then it was a pretty straight shot for a kilometer and a half there to the falls. And then I didn't include the third slide in this, it's in the package. We proposed crossing the falls and then staying high at the racetrack or the CNR track elevation, more or less, to the parking lots. But there would be a dip in there where you could actually connect the walking trail and provide walking access to the top of the falls. So, and the whole route turned out to be quite natural without any industry. Even the logging doesn't look like it was logged because the trees have grown up nicely. So if you go to slide 4, and just quickly, that's right off the end of the logging road and the slash. We're right into second growth forest, and it's quite open and really easy to build a trail. The next slide, that's just a typical piece of the road. As you might have seen in your package, there are about 4 different stretches of road over about 4 kilometers. Some of them have trees growing right in the middle. The interesting feature is they're very gentle, they're wide, and there's no erosion. I mean, I'm used to going up Forest Service roads and logging roads where they quickly wash out and there's water everywhere. I don't know, the water must percolate into the rocks on this mountainside because they're more or less stayed smooth. You just come in and sweep the leaves off with a broom more or less. The other thing about this is that you could actually get cross-country skiing in here in the winter quite easily, in and out. And I could go to the next slide, which is that's just up on that bump where you can see in the distance the highway heading up Suicide Hill. And there's a lot of smooth rock up there, but there's easily found routes for the trail. And the next slide. And this is the one shot I just tried to show so that you get a sense of where we're at. There was a third expedition that got down to the river. There's some climbing bolts and ropes in there. But we went over that when we labeled view bump on the right-hand side, came down through the forest, ran into one short cliff section where you could build a trail on the water's edge, but the water gets up higher and in floods, so you'd have to do a little bolting. And then it's sort of a steep slide hill through the shade there, and then it just eases off out to the falls. So with Danny's comment, basically he covered the whole thing and he saw no particular issues building the trail on this route. Next slide. So at the falls, I took this from the viewing platform, tried to get it in the real focus length, but I'm not sure I did that with my smartphone. But the gap up there is only about, I think it's a little less than 6 meters. So I could anticipate a steel bolted bridge, which could be maybe 10 meters span over the top of that and connecting the trail on both sides. And it's all good, solid, sort of a granite gneiss rock, and everything could be just drilled in, somewhat like they did with the posts for the viewing platform. So that's what I had in mind there. But also, of course, it would be fenced, and so if you allowed public up there, you would fence it, so they would stay within the trail aspects. If the next slides. So really what appealed to us was that there are many places on this trail that are quite iconic. And if you come up from Squamish through the canyon, this is a picture taken off the trail, a railway crossing. Quite a beautiful stretch. Next slide. This is Gord's Garden just before, where there's probably 8 or 10 of these Douglas firs in there. quite spectacular. And in Whistler, we have the ancient cedars. So here's the ancient firs, I guess. I would like to think that they would be protected someday in terms of the land use there. They're quite something. Next slide. So this is interesting because this is down near Brandywine Falls. It looks like they just took a scraper, scraped off the moss, and we got a 13,000-year-old trail under the moss. Again, a really beautiful piece of the trail. There's many out there. And then the last slide, well, I kind of threw this in because we're in Italy on the Appian Way, a 2,300-year-old road, which Italy's trying to restore and bring in for tourism. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Our paving stones are probably 100 foot thick. And theirs are, who knows? So it just was an interesting juxtaposition. And if you have a meal at the mayor's restaurant in Pemberton, you'll see the same pattern of stones at his door. Anyway, so I guess having said this, what we're looking at is asking the board to consider exploring this trail idea and open a dialogue with the Lillooet Nation and BC Parks, and hopefully we could stick handle it forward. I don't think the costs, any of the costs in this trail would be beyond the typical costs that have been spent. There's nothing abnormally expensive about it. Anyway, that's the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Questions? Go ahead, Director Barton.
Some of the questions I had were, had you contemplated crossing before the part that you highlighted above the falls?
Well,
my concern is the aesthetic of people looking at the falls, and there's a bridge across the actual falls.
well, yeah, of course we thought of that, and it's pretty expensive and impractical to maybe have a suspension bridge somewhere because the river is so wide and flood. There is a couple of other points immediately behind the narrowest upstream, and the one where the river first flows in is you need about a 20-meter span there, and you could do that, and you'd have to elevate it because historically the water does flow over those rocks around when you get really extreme high water, but it would be stepped back, and again from the viewpoint of the falls, you're only going to see the piece that you see through the viewpoint. Right. And the same with the picture I showed. There are trees, sort of spindly trees, and the bridge would be you'd be arriving behind those trees. So from the viewpoint, I think all you're going to see is the piece of bridge in the gap.
Okay.
And but yes, there's an impact of having people there. And I might say I've been there numerous times, and half the time I see people wandering around up there because they've just found their way, or they go down the racetracks or the railway tracks. So in a sense, this would provide people opportunity to see at the top, which is pretty spectacular, but in a safe way.
Right. And then the part where there was climbing bolts, go back to there. Would you anticipate attaching like a platform to the side of that, or it showed your hiking route, but I'm a bit confused as to.
Well, yeah, that short cliff section, it's just about 10 meters, and most water level, we walk across the base of it.
Okay.
But, Jordan Sturdy advised, he's seen it when it's been up here.
Mm-hmm.
And so practically speaking, you could bolt the walkway on the cliff a few meters above the existing ground. There's a piece on the way to Squamish like that where it feels like they just put a piece of fencing. It's a bit sketchy.
Yeah.
And it's hanging off the cliff above the railroad tracks. And I anticipate something a little bit better built than that, but, and these are all pieces of the trail that over beyond my lifetime will get upgraded and fixed to a better standard, so it's nothing particularly difficult to do. It could all be built by standing on the ground, working at low water, right? It's not gonna be way up.
Yeah. And then my final question is, I suppose, a technical one. Back in the day when Gordon McKeever was heading up the Sea to Sky project, he would stick handle any negotiations with BC Parks or CNR and all that. Is someone responsible like Gord that is doing that? Forgive my ignorance if I should know that.
Should we go to Alice?
Yes, yeah.
That would be me.
Okay, great. Forgive me for not knowing, but
I guess as a small group of old guys, we didn't really see proceeding beyond with anything.
Yeah,
We
sure.
needed this meeting and see where this goes, but yeah, that's
well, thanks for doing that. When I saw it, I was like jealous that I didn't get to go on that hike.
we're going again next week, maybe.
Okay, well, let me know. But thanks very much. It's heartwarming to see citizen engagement with that. Thank you.
Through the chair, is it gonna be a multi-use trail or is it just gonna be a hiking trail?
No, I think I would anticipate it would be used just like the rest of the trail, cycling or walking.
Okay, past the falls, would it hook up to the hiking trail to the parking lot?
No. So, well, it could. I'm suggesting it would come off the falls and swing towards the railroad tracks and stay high, although there's immediately a bit of a gully. And it would go through that, and then it would stay up high at track level around to the highway and connect down to the parking lots in the same alignment that the current proposal would do. And in the dip in that gully, the hiking trail is just below that. In fact, I've walked off the hiking trail into that dip and up to the falls. So you would have, I anticipate having a bike rack there to park a bike, and people could, and you wouldn't allow bikes down on the walking trail, right? And, so you would be able to have that traffic back and forth, and people could walk up, and it would be fenced all the way with sturdy fencing. I think that's just our thinking on it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Rainbow, question?
Yeah, Doug, I'm sorry that we didn't manage to connect in the summer. We didn't see you again. Looking at those two routes, as a hiker, I would prefer the route you're suggesting. It looks much more interesting than the other one. But before we go much further with this, it would seem to me that the biggest hurdle is the bridge. You know, if you can't get permission to build that bridge, whether it's right at the falls or further up, then it's a non-starter, isn't it?
Well, as far as crossing the river there, it would be. Although the trail could go past that and continue down to, I forget the name of the
Green
first.
River,
Yeah, little,
Forester Road.
yeah, the golf, I just keep calling down to the golf courses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Green River Forester Road.
Yeah, and of course, I've never been on that, but I presume you'd run into the old logging roads that would connect there. And, so you could do this all the way. I don't know how far that would be, maybe 13 kilometers or so. And you have probably, when you leave Paradise Meadows and Squamish, you have quite a long trip up to the canyon, and the only exit there is out at Ruby's old place. I forget the name of that lake, and there's an exit road that gets you up the highway halfway along. So it's quite a long stretch, but I just think you're missing a really spectacular opportunity for that location. But it's not I mean, you could carry on and stay on that side of the river.
Director Stoner?
Thank you through the chair. Thanks for being here and for scoping out a beautiful potential future trail. I think one of the challenges is that some of the work is already kind of going on the existing proposed trail network. And so this might be more of a question to staff in terms of how do we integrate from here? What are the options? Or maybe how far have we gone down the process of the first option? To try and figure out what our next step is in terms of figuring out how we manage this proposal.
If I could, Chair, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Allison. I think, as you say, that work's ongoing. If the board decides that they would like this proposal to be looked at further, I would suggest that we do those two things in parallel, because the current approach is down the track, and I wouldn't suggest that stops. But if the board decides that we're to look at this, then we can certainly do that. Allison, I don't know.
Great. The permitting process is underway and close to completion. We have quite a few approvals already, so. But we can continue with that simultaneously.
And in terms of like sunken costs, so we have like the permitting processes are underway. Have we, other than staff time to get those permits, do we have other sunk costs at this point?
Staff time is the only expenditure today.
Great, thank you.
Has there been any conversation with Dubai Nation about this area?
We certainly know that
No,
that's
I
the first step just about.
Yeah, so that's what I just, whatever resolution we're coming up with here before we have staff put a bunch of time in, I think that could be, that's an obvious first step. Because it could be a non-starter if they're not comfortable with this idea, so whatever resolution we're putting together here to have staff have a look at this. I would say one of the first steps would be to, I'm sure Allison's already on that, but I like to state the obvious sometimes.
So I do have some language around a resolution for consideration by the board. And that is that staff bring back to the board a report that compares the current route to the alternate proposed route that includes, among other factors, a comparison of cost and time to completion. And then I would add with appropriate communications as a first step with the Lillooet Nation.
That's good. I move that.
Second.
Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Burns Jones. Any comments? That resolution? Okay, I call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Wiley.
Thank you.
It's lovely to see you. See you again soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would like to propose a motion that we close this meeting to the public under section 90. Is that 1(I)? 1(I) for legal advice, and we will, I'll move it. We have a second here, seconded by Director Stoner. Does anyone oppose? Motion